Hello and welcome to the North Metro SBDC programming.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Raul Lopez. I'm the Assistant Director for the North Metro SBDC. And I don't want to talk too much because this is a fascinating topic. I think it can go very deep. And I want to give plenty of time for Samantha to cover. But if you could just real quick in the chat, just drop your first, last name, your business name and type if you have a business. If you don't have a business, just put, I don't have a business yet. And number 3, your city in which your business is doing business out of. If it's multiple cities, you can put multiple cities. So real quick, your first, last name, your business name and type, and your city that you do business out of. And I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Miss Samantha Peaslee.
Thanks so much, Raul. And I want to just kind of say at the outset, for those of you here today, you're going to get a door prize, so to speak, at the end of this. I am going to give Raul permission to send out this slideshow that we're going to use today to everybody who is here, as well as I have a nice business readiness checklist that we're going to be sending out to all of our participants that kind of gives you a nice shorthand of what we go through here if you're getting yourself ready to actually segue out of your business. So see that we've got a pet service business. And then if you guys can also put whether you're an LLC, S corporation, not-for-profit, whatever that one is in there, that gives me a good idea of kind of who we have in the room, how we're talking about these organizational documents. So nice to meet you, Megan, with the pet service business. That's exciting. So I might also pick on some of you guys a little bit today to make these applicable to what you're doing. So, title of today's talk, Securing Your Legacy, Legal Planning for Business Succession. I am Samantha Peaslee. I am an attorney with Polaris Law Group. We serve as general counsel for small to medium-sized businesses, and within that, I specialize particularly in intellectual property, international transactions, and data privacy. I have helped a number of businesses close or segue out, transfer to somebody else. We also make sure that we think about these processes from the beginning with a lot of our clients. So we do try to incorporate this from the beginning with all our general counsel folks. So also a welcome Avelina, and looks like we have a clothing store, and hello Shelby. Nice to meet you guys today. So on the boring side of this, I do have to make a disclaimer. This presentation is educational and informational only. This is not legal advice. Legal advice is specific, one-on-one, personalized advice given to you by an attorney who knows the full scope of everything that you are working on. This today is to give everybody some guidelines, some ideas, some good practice tips, before you jump into all of that. I do also want to disclaim that we might be mentioning some tax or financial things as we go on. But I am not an accountant, I am not a CPA, and I am not a tax attorney. So typically I say that my tax and financial knowledge is contained to whatever is within the presentation, which I have usually gotten checked by somebody who I work with. However, we have some wonderful financial advisors with the SBDC. So if you do have specific financial questions as a result of this, highly recommend that after this you go sign up for a consultant, particularly with Karen Patel, but any of our tax or financial consultants on that. Raul did put in the chat, but also just to reiterate, toss in your questions as you have them, or feel free to raise your hand, and we will get to those. I might at some point wait for a section break. We've got a couple of little section breaks in there. We'll also do some at the end, but especially if you're having issues with seeing something with clarification, if you have a question like that, pop it in there. The worst thing that I'm going to say is let's wait till we get to a section break on that front. So With that, our agenda, we've got a busy one today. We're going to go through three major categories here, three major sections. First, why are we doing this in the first place? Hopefully, all of you who are in here have a specific reason that you are doing this, have a specific desire. Maybe you're looking to do this for way, way, way in the future. Maybe you're thinking about it imminently. Maybe you've already got a buyer lined up or that great employee that you're wanting to pass things along to. Feel free to pop those in the chat also if you wanted to share with us why you're here. Why was this important for you? If you're just here because this seemed interesting, fantastic. Welcome as well. This is good for all business owners at whatever stage of their business. The second, we're going to talk about pre-planning and housekeeping. The things that you want to be doing before it's actually time for your succession plan. What things can you do as you go to make your life easier once that day actually comes? And then third, we'll talk about what happens when you're actually ready to leave, and kind of an ideal, if your attorney had a perfect world timeline for you that doesn't actually fit reality for everybody, but that just to kind of know that if you were doing this, this is our perfect world here. And then we'll also have some additional time for questions at the end. So great. Glad we have somebody trying to do this from the beginning. You'll really like that section 2 in there. Get things from the outset. So why succession plan? Why are we wanting to do this at the beginning? Well, because this is how most of us imagine exiting. We're going to build up this great thing. We've poured our blood, sweat, and tears into it. We've worked for so long. Surely, when I am ready to go, somebody is going to hand me a giant pile of money for all of my work. I am going to retire. I am going to go to Aruba, and I'm going to be super happy. However, what we actually end up seeing is a lot of people exiting like this. Suddenly one day you just flip over that close sign and sell off what you can. You know, maybe you have time to notify the clients. Maybe there aren't any clients anymore. We kind of see a lot of people go out with a whimper. That isn't necessary. We don't want that. We want that first one, or at least somewhere in between that first one. And so succession planning can really, really help with that, not kind of getting to that last minute going, this isn't what I envisioned at all. So there are a couple different ways to exit. Not all of them really go into the planning, but it's good to talk about these ways to know what your options are, and to also know that there isn't a one size fits all answer. So that giant piles of money that comes in, hopefully you get a giant pile of money, but not everybody's going to get it the same way. You don't have, it really annoyed me the first couple of years when I had my small business, when people would come up to me and be like, oh, are you going to build it up and then like sell it in 10 years? Like, is that the goal? It's like, no, my goal is to have a business and do the thing that I want to be doing in my business. It isn't to build something up to sell. If that is your goal, all power to you. That's great. We come into these for different reasons. But I think there's this absence in the conversation that the way that each of us exits from our business is different based on our goals, based on our business, based on why we came in here, as well as based on the transferability of our business. Some of our businesses are easier to transfer than others. So everybody is going to exit their business at some point. If you have figured out a way not to die and to keep it forever, please call me after this. But the ways that we like to kind of look at exiting, the first one, that's kind of that hanging the side on the door. We call it fading. You just kind of fade out. Maybe it's a planned fading, maybe it's not. You just sort of start downsizing the work that you're doing and who you're working with. Maybe you just start working with a couple very specific customers, or you kind of have this one last product line left. And then one day it's just kind of well, I'm done. That was my last customer. That was my last job. Another way is just flat out closing, liquidating. We're going out of business, sometimes planned, sometimes not. Here's our final day. We're going to go sell all of our assets. We're going to then take anything that's left in that bank account and go home. Doesn't really go anywhere, just shuts down. Also one that can be planned, can be unplanned. Those are the two that really could be planned or unplanned. Everything else needs at least some sort of planning and work to happen with them. They don't really happen accidentally. Retiring from the work, but maintaining ownership. This would be kind of if I kept going and owning my law firm, but I have a bunch of associates and other attorneys to do things for me. I don't do the day-to-day legal work with my client. I still draw that profit. Maybe I still do some of the business management side of things, kind of step in from time to time with a big client or something, but that otherwise I'm not really working in the day-to-day. I'm just a business owner at that time. Usually to do that, we have to pair that with one of these other later options. We can't just do that if nobody is taking over the day-to-day work there. But it is a very common option, particularly in elements of family-owned businesses or in certain service industries. An internal transfer would mean that you have somebody who's already working with you, who then takes your shares, either through a sale or through working for it or casually. Sometimes this can be another member or shareholder. We at Polaris have 3 members. So if, say, I wanted to step away and I transfer my shares to the other 2 members, that would be an option. For others, maybe it's employee owned. So if Megan has a great army of pet sitters and groomers and caretakers, and she says, ooh, I have these 3 employees that really just nailed it, I'm going to transfer it to them. That would be an internal transfer, somebody who knows the business. It's easier, quite frankly. It's just often a lot easier, a lot less paperwork, a lot less diligence. Then we have external transfers, but that are with somebody close to you or the business. These are the next kind of easiest way to do it. Maybe they're not in the business at the moment, but they know you, they know the industry, something like that. So oftentimes these are family members. So this might be when the kids take over. It could also be known industry professionals. So, you know, we have a couple of other good attorney friends who we will send work to or work with. Maybe my other members in my company don't want a part of the business when I leave it, but our great trust and estates referral wants to grow her practice. We've worked with her. She knows us. She knows we have a good client base. We maybe have some shared clients. That would be a close transfer. And then we also would call some of the small scale sales close transfers. That's more just because they're easy, not because they have the same amount of paperwork as those close transfers, not necessarily because you know them. When we say small scale sales, we usually mean under $100,000. You just don't need that same sort of runway. You don't need that same sort of volume of paperwork there. You obviously still want to do some of these things. It's still way better to have everything legally in place, but it's not quite as in-depth. External arm's length transfers, those are for anything over that $100,000. You've got just more work to do. You don't know this person. They don't know you. You need to do due diligence, financials, more contracts, more protections. And then IPOs, we don't usually get with the Small Business Development Center, but I do like to point them out there. This would be that initial public offering. You've gone real big. You've gone Twitter big. You're going to be selling this on the stock market. That would be those IPOs. If you are interested in IPOs, we can talk about that offline. Definitely schedule a consult on that one. This is the only time I am going to mention that today, because not usually relevant for our folks. But those are the different ways we can exit. How do you determine which is the right way for you? If you're listening, you probably kind of have an idea of what you like best. But we like you to think of all of these things. The ideal way to figure out which of those is the best plan for you considers you, which includes your wants and your needs. Do you want to keep working? Do you want to just be done one day? Do you want to be involved? Considers the business. Different businesses are going to apply differently to those. For example, as a law firm, I can't do employee owned. I have to have somebody who's licensed as an attorney to own my business. So I'm very limited in what I can do as far as succession planning. Other businesses don't necessarily have those limitations. Has to consider the transferee. If I say, Catherine, you're just going to take my share, I'm ready to exit, you're taking my share, right? And she goes, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't need that much of the business. I don't want that much responsibility. We see this a lot with the family-owned things, is sometimes mom and dad assume that little Johnny wants to take over the business and little Johnny wants to do something completely different. Or maybe an employee doesn't want that kind of responsibility. So you have to consider what they want also. And minimize the surprise. All of this comes down to you don't want to be like, all right, I'm ready for that big pile of money, that trip to Aruba. Time to hand this off to little Johnny. Time to hand this off to my business partner. And they go, wait, what? No, I thought we had like 5 more years doing this before. I'm not ready for that. Whatever we're doing with succession planning, we're trying to minimize surprise. So that's how you pick the best fit for you. You have to make all of those considerations. And also by planning this, you bring some control back, even when that surprise happens. We can't eliminate surprise. I had a number of companies that had to shut down during COVID. That was not expected. We did not anticipate that happening. The ones who weathered that the best were the ones who already had some of these plans in place. Maybe it wasn't perfect the way that we were able to get it before that, but it was closer. And so we already had some of those plans there. It also gets your team in place. You're not having to scramble at the last minute for your attorney and your accountant and your financial advisor. We had one recently where they had a normal accountant that they thought we'll be good for the succession planning or for the sale when that goes. Well, they never actually checked with their team on that front. Turns out that CPA was very uncomfortable doing a sale. She had never done an asset or stock sale before. She had kind of had just sort of normal things with businesses. And her preference was that the client find an accountant that actually had some expertise in that. Well, now we're trying to scramble for that last minute. So knowing your team ahead of time and allowing you to be on that same page with your team gives you a much better control. So by planning these things ahead of time, prepping those documents, you can better weather emergencies, you can better minimize those surprises, you can have some control rather than just flipping that sign to closed. So that's why we went to succession plan. Any questions on that before we go to your pre-planning? All right, I don't see any in the chat. I don't see any hands up. If you do have one, don't forget you can always come back to this, pop those in the chat. But sounds like we're all on team planning good. We understand why we do it. So now, how do we think about this ahead of time? How do we make the plan or the timeline? We recommend planning at many different stages here. So you'll see here are all the times that we recommend to start and continue planning. So you notice initially starting from day one, Megan, picking on you because you mentioned it. Day one is a great time to start that planning. Is your day one planning going to be as robust as your 2 to 3 years before planning? No, of course not. You're still figuring out where you're going, but you are getting that team together. You're making sure that you have everything in place so that if something does come up, you're ready. And it's important for you to know as an owner, you're not locked, you're not stuck. That's a word we hate to hear from our business clients, stuck. No. You're not stuck. You have a good plan. If you like doing this, great. If that becomes something you don't like doing, you have a way out. Then we always like going as you go. So as things come up, as things change. And so ideally, we like you to review what that plan is every 1 to 3 years. Now, I also say plan. Initially, that plan might just be a couple of clauses in your operating agreement, in your membership agreement, might be something in your general business plan. This might just be a couple of paragraphs that you're reviewing every couple of years initially. Sometimes it might be an emergency plan document. But typically, you don't need to do this every day. Every 1 to 3 years, depending on your age, where you are in your business, how quickly things are growing, how quickly things are changing. Annual meetings are really important for all businesses. This is a great thing to do at your annual meeting. Make sure that your documents and plans are still in line with your succession plan. Then with major business changes. So if you are then bringing on that partner, You're bringing on a new member. You're bringing on a new shareholder, a new investor. Well, now that succession plan might have changed. You might now have the option of, when you leave, to hand things over to a member. So you absolutely need to then reevaluate your plan with that person. If you are bringing on new employees for the first time, that might be a good time to reassess. Well, oh, now I can't just shut this down. Now I'm going to have these other things that I need to do if I close. Does that change the plan? Maybe you're bringing on a whole new product line. That might change what your plans are as far as when you exit. And then also with major life changes, don't forget that as small business owners, these things intersect a lot. So you have to look at the changes in the business, but also your life changes. Do you have kids? Did you not have kids before? And now you need to consider how you want to spend time with them, how much money you need to leave behind for them, the fact that maybe this diminishes your savings a little bit. Have you been working with your child and now your child wants to up and move out to Virginia? Well, that's going to be a major life change that impacts what you're deciding to do with your business. Divorces are a common one, sadly, as far as that goes. Early deaths, those are all major life changes that do in fact impact how you plan your business. But there are the good ones too. Maybe you get a windfall. You win the lottery. Maybe you don't need to be working until you're 65 anymore. Like, ooh, let's push that up. 55 retirement for me. Yes. So those are good times to visit that planning. And then most importantly, if you do nothing else, 2 to 3 years before you're ready. Now, why do I have all these other ones in here if the 2 to 3 years before you're ready is the most important? Because sometimes being ready sneaks up on you. Or you get something like COVID, you don't get to go when you're ready. You have to kind of urgently do something. But typically, if you're starting to feel that, yeah, nope, youngest is getting out of college in 2 years, and then I am dreaming of that trip around the world that I've always wanted to take. I think I want to sell the business before then. If you know that, now it's time to really get into that meat and potatoes of the plan. So you want to do that constant. How do you plan in all of those things before the 2 to 3 years? Our last section is going to be that 2 years. Now we're going to be talking about those first 5 a little bit. First and foremost, you got to get your team together. So I talked a little bit about the CPA. The team's going to look a little different for everybody, but basically this is anybody who's going to have decision-making authority in this, who you're going to be transferring to, or who is going to be helping you transfer. Okay, this isn't everybody associated with the business, but this is anybody who would be important to know that before it happens, or who suddenly one day might have your business fall in their lap. Important to know. So other business owners, obviously, I will always tell Catherine and Andy before anybody else if I have a proposed change in our succession plan. They need to know that, especially if they're part of it. Life partners and family, your spouse, your kids, whoever that is, they need to be part of that. If you think you want to retire at 65 and your partner thinks that you want to retire at 60 so you can take that trip around the world, got to get on the same page there. So they are an important part of that conversation. And I would even say, I would dare to say that this list goes in order of importance here. Although arguably the life partner's family should be first, the other business owners do need to know what's happening. The employees, this isn't necessarily every employee. On week 2 of your employee starting in, you don't need to sit down with them and say, all right, here's my 10-year succession plan with you. That's not what we're trying to say here. But if part of your plan is for the employees to take over, you do need to have that conversation sooner rather than later. And if you have key employees who would be taking care of things in the event of an emergency happening to you, they need to be part of this plan, at least in the emergency sense. So because if you go down and they need to know how to open up the store, how to run payroll, how to pay the taxes, they are important to be part of this plan and what they are capable of. So that's the select employees. And then those partner professionals and backups. This is very important for those sole proprietors out there, of which we have a couple in the room here. As solo business owners, it can be really easy to just put everything in the business first and to kind of forget your own self-care from time to time. At the SBDC, we don't like that because we think that it leads to burnout. We think that it makes it less likely that you make it to those important milestones for your business. And so we always recommend having some partner professionals or some backups, other people in your industry who, if you have the flu, can come in and run the front desk for you for a day. Or if you're going on vacation with your family, you're going to go see your kids graduate from college, they can take over for a week. Now, some industries don't need this if you have very flexible clientele and scheduling. If you have really good employees, that can kind of serve as that gap. But if you're solo, it's good to have that backup. So a lot of times it's also good to have that backup if you are a professional and something could happen to you if your family is unwilling or unable to do that. A lot of times spouses fill that kind of gap. But, you know, for example, we said we have a partner law firm who we work with from time to time. If I go on vacation, I can call her. My staff can call her if an emergency comes up that only an attorney can take on. We recommend the same for therapists. We recommend the same for nurses, those kinds of specialized professionals particularly. So yeah, if this is something you're terrified for, this is a good reason to create that plan. All right, let's take these test runs. Let's take a long weekend off and see if somebody can cover for us. So by getting this long-term team in early, you can do these test runs. You can do these trials and errors with people. You can then offer to cover for them when they're gone. Like, yeah, absolutely. We'll run your shipping along with ours. So that's why getting this long-term team in early is very good. Business attorney. You know, that's about halfway down there. Those other folks are actually more important than your business attorney here because they're kind of the what keeps it up and running. Getting your business attorney in early is great. I will tell people I can do a sale for one of my clients fairly quickly. If I have never met you, minimum 90 days. I prefer 90 days for my clients also. But if I have never met you, I do not know your business, you cannot call me on the 15th and ask for me to get something done for you by the end of the month, particularly a business sale. Not going to happen. I don't know enough about your business. So it's really important to get that team in early while things are good to kind of have those conversations along the way. Accountants, kind of same thing. Like I said, it's important to check with those business attorney and accountants and be like, when I am ready to transition, are you the right person for me? Or will I need somebody else on that team? Financial planner is always very good. You can get them along a little bit later in the game. So maybe not day one, but kind of as those major life changes start going. Why? You need to know when you can actually retire. If you're like, I want to retire at age 65, what do you need to be saving at this point? How do you need to be investing? What kind of insurance do you need to be having? So those financial planners are important. And then trust and estates attorney. Sometimes those can be the same as your business attorney. Our firm doesn't do trust and estates also. Those are the ones who write your wills, who make sure that you have those trusts set up, who make sure that your business plan aligns with your real life plan. Part of the reason for that, well, I guess that comes up later. I'll come back to that one. So what do you need to have a good succession plan in place? A basic timeline, kind of roughly speaking, how long do you want to be in this? Like how long before you want to start having that conversation, before you start bringing those people in? General desires. When you're ready to start stepping out, do you want that to be a slow plan or do you want it to be a clean break? Me personally, at this stage in my life, I think that I'm going to want to start like doing a step down to part-time and then a step down to super part-time, still kind of be involved. I know I'm going to have trouble letting go. So a clean break sounds difficult for me. Other people, the clean break sounds really appealing. Just maybe you can't, you're an all or nothing person. And so you need to do that clean break. Money, how much do you want to be walking away with? Is this if I can't sell it for at least $200,000, I'm not going to sell it. I need to at least get back what I put into it, whatever that happens to be. I need enough in order to, if I If I sell it before I'm 65, I need this much, but after that stage, then I start getting all of these other benefits and pensions and retirement funds. Doesn't matter. Do you want it to stay internal? Do you want it to stay in the family with the employees? Is this going to be a true retirement situation, or are you going to be on to the next adventure business-wise? Why does this matter? Because it's going to matter legally as to whether you can conflict with your old business. So if this is not going to be a true retirement, if you're going to, so for example, if I, instead of just retiring from being, or if after I'm a lawyer, I want to just be a full-time business consultant, go be in-house general counsel, I want to make sure that I cover any of those conflicts that might come up as far as that goes. I also need to make sure I have enough startup funds to do that, that I've got enough going. So that's also an important consideration in your strategy. Industry considerations we kind of talked about. If you have any licensing concerns, you need to keep those in mind as you're doing your plan. Assumptions or base requirements. So an assumption would be something like, I assume that my partner is going to want to take over my interest. An assumption would be, I assume that I can sell this on the market for at least $100,000. If you have any of those need to go in your strategy or plan, because your team needs to know them. If they're just in your head, you can't plan around them. And one of your advisors might go, whoa, pause. We need to look at something else with this if that's your key assumption. And your plan should also have when to start that real prep in there. So kind of our baseline day-to-day prep versus, remember I said, ideally 2 to 3 years ahead of time. So, are you going to need to start earlier than that if you want to make sure that you have a good employee who you can transfer to? So you want all of those things to have a good, successful succession plan. But then you also want to be ready for if it changes. Most importantly, you want to have those reviews built in there. But then also, what happens if you have to close early? That should be part of that plan. Ideally, if you have a good succession plan, then you should be able to jump to the close early easier. You kind of may have to lose some of those hard lines and assumptions, but those should be built into that plan. Additionally, by building liquidation provisions and how individual members can exit an organization into your operating agreement, your bylaws, your membership agreements, you're going to have a way easier time. If somebody just up and decides that it's time to leave and you have a process for that, that will take out so much heartache and indecision and monetary confusion. If you have okay, we need to close tomorrow, how do we do that? That will take out a lot of those issues in there. So have those built-in caveats ready. Those are really the things also that you start that day one with. What happens if somebody needs to leave early? What happens if you need to shut down early? If those are the only things you have on day one, you're still in a better position than I'd say probably 80% of companies out there. So it's a great place to be. Some people don't like doing the full out succession plan. We at least like them to have that emergency plan. Megan, you said that this was your nightmare. This is how you prep for that. This is just a who, what, when, where, when, how. So if you follow these ones and keep this in a safe place, you'll be ready for most emergencies, which then catapults you up on that succession plan if you're doing a full out one. So always make sure that if somebody's covering for you in an emergency, that they know they're supposed to cover for you in an emergency, whether it's that partner company, your spouse, can be multiple people. Maybe you want your attorney to take some things and your spouse to take others. We have several of our clients that's the case for. Maybe that it's hey, my spouse has the bank account and they have all of the passwords, but they need to do this with the guidance of the attorney. They need to do this with the guidance of my accountant. Perfectly fine. As well as a list of that key team. So members of your team can reach each other if something's happening. A list of kind of what needs to be done bare minimum to keep the company going if something were to happen to you, or if it needs to have an emergency close. If you passed away suddenly, you got hit by a bus and the company needs to close, what steps need to be taken on that one? Where do you keep your passwords? Can be in the emergency plan. Cannot be. Maybe it's I have a password locker on my desktop. Here's how you get into my desktop, and then you should have everything else. Where do you keep your client contacts? How do you tell them that something has happened and there's an emergency? Where are the keys? What are the codes to everything? Honestly, I recommend often for this one, taking like a week in your life, and just going about your business normally with a Google Drive document, and just kind of typing all of this out as you go, and then putting it in a nice format. So kind of what happens in a week of my business? Could somebody replicate the important parts of that if necessary? And then of course the when, what is the circumstance for this? Maybe if you're just out for a day, obviously it doesn't need to happen. But if you're out for a month, probably would need to happen. At what point do we tip that into the emergency plan? And then anything else that needs to happen. Keep it in an emergency plan or an emergency file. So if you have a corporate book, that's usually a good place for that. If you don't have a corporate book, keeping it on your Google Drive so long as someone else can access it. If you're at home and have a joint fire safe with other members of your family, good place for that. Some place where the person who is responsible for this would know to look is the key thing. If you get your emergency plan done, like I said, you're in great shape for the rest of your succession plan. So if your organizational documents have those clauses and you have an emergency plan, when you get ready to go, you are going to have a significantly easier time just moving forward with your leaving your business. The other things that keep your organization in shape and flexible in that time and ready to go at a moment's notice include filing your taxes, maintaining your operating agreements or bylaws, holding those annual meetings. Remember, those two are required to keep that protection from liability as well. So it's a good thing to do from a liability protection as well as a future plan. Maintaining up-to-date member agreements, membership agreements, member lists. Systemizing, delegating, and departmentalizing. What do I mean by this? The less that is on your individual plate and that is more of a part of a greater system or part of a greater everybody who does these kinds of tasks knows how to do it, the easier it is going to be for you to step away quickly if necessary. So for example, if I have SOPs on most of my processes and my emergency plan says where to have those SOPs, one of my other partners might be a little bit slower to do those things than me because they need to read through them and understand them, but we're going to have a consistent experience. I'm going to feel much better because they know everything that they need to do on that front. It becomes easier to transition. And then maintaining that emergency plan, maintaining savings. This is obviously sometimes a little bit aspirational, rather than let me pause that. Megan, what is an SOP? Sorry, standard operating procedure. So any sort of document, video, audio recording that says, hey, when I do this task, let's say run payroll. When I run payroll, you log in here. You do this on the 1st and the 15th of every month. Log in here. Here's the password. Click on this menu. Then from that menu, navigate to the second thing down on the left side that says this. Enter in everybody's numbers for the month. Click continue, check to review, send. So a document or a video like this that says, here is how you do this very normal task that we do so that everybody can see it. So that's an SOP, policies, procedures. Good question. Thank you for that. And then maintaining that emergency plan, maintaining savings, for a lot of new businesses, this can be aspirational. Typically, once you're around your 3rd year in business, you should be starting to grow those savings. Usually we say your first 3 years, you're just building up. Every time money comes in, you're using it to build your business, develop your business, or pay yourself. Important. See, it's the next one. Pay yourself. Once you're past that 3 years, you should be starting to build up savings that are appropriate for your business type. 3 months is a goal that a lot of people say. Others say enough to cover 1 month of expenses. Depending on what you do in your business, that savings goal will vary. But the more savings you have, the better able you are to weather an emergency, because if you're not generating the income for a couple of days, it's not that big of a deal. Paying yourself, No one wants to buy a business where you're not getting paid. Your employees don't want to buy that if they're saying, well, I'm making this as an employee and you're making a quarter of what I'm making as the owner. No, I'm good. I'll stay right here. As well as general business health, and we started a business hopefully to be able to pay yourself. Please pay yourself, especially important if you are looking at that transition at some point. It is you're going to have to do one of those first two options, close or fade, if you're not paying yourself. No one's going to want to buy. And then maintain your insurance, protect yourself, protect the people in the future. These are the things that you do from day one up until that 2 years ahead of time. These are the things. If you don't do these things, I will tell you that we're going to sit down when you're ready to sell. And I'm going to say, great, we need 6 to 9 months to get this all in order. And, hopefully you've been filing your taxes. If not, it could take much longer to fix that because you're not going to be able to get all of this gone without those tax liabilities. So by doing these things on a regular basis, it means that if there's an emergency or when you're ready to sell it, you can drop everything and move on because you've already got it in a nice, organized, neat place. You know your company's healthy. You know it's good. You know it's attractive. Any questions on that before we get down to the final section here? All right. So now the day arrives. You are ready. You have done this for 20 years or 10 years or 5 years, wherever it is that you want to go. And you're like, all right, I'm done. I am ready to sell this. Or somebody comes to you and they say, hey, I would like to buy your company. And you say, oh, that's a surprise, but that's also a really big number. Yeah, I think I'm ready to make that happen. Or you get some great offer to travel around the world and you're like, well, I can't do that with this. I would like to take that opportunity. Yes, I'm going to say yes, let's do this. Okay, so any of those can be the day arrives. Hopefully, the day that arrives is not the date that you actually do this. Now, everything I'm about to say will assume immediate clean cut transfer. We talked earlier about you could slowly siphon off or you could do a clean break. We're going to assume a clean break for all of these for the purpose of explanation, but you can always do a clean cut. Hopefully, when the day arrives, it's not actually the day of the sale. So you've got some things you now have to do that you couldn't do while you were doing that sort of transition. First one's getting a valuation. I would like to remind everybody you get these slides after the presentation. I'm not going to go through every type of valuation in here. The key point that I want to get to is there are different kinds of valuation that work, that different businesses and industries and business sizes will find more appropriate for them. The correct kind of valuation for you should be a conversation with your financial advisor, with your accountant, as well as with whoever's purchasing the company. You'll notice there's informal and formal. Informal, we don't get a third party to do. We just kind of look at based on what we know about your business. That's what all of them have in common. And we come up with a number that looks fair based on one of these factors. Formal means you are paying somebody for a valuation. I typically do not recommend a formal valuation for any sale or for any business that you think is worth less than $100,000 unless there's a dispute. And I mean like a big discrepancy in what you guys think it is. It's going to take too much of the chunk of that value there. If you can do an informal valuation to come to something fair, that's much better in that circumstances. If you are over $1 million in value, I think you are crazy not to get a formal valuation. So notice there's a big gap there, 100,000 to $1 million, that is just kind of a what's best for your business and the circumstances. But there are a lot of different kinds here. It's always good to talk to a good financial professional when you're ready for evaluation, but you need to do one of these regardless of how you're selling. The only time you don't need to do this is if you're kind of fading out with no assets. Even if you're closing out, you need to do that informal valuation of the liquidation value. So that's my brief on valuation. You guys are going to get that one in there so you can kind of look at the different types in there. I do want to put a note. If your operating agreement or bylaws say you have a valuation method, you can't then pick a different one later. You have to follow the one that you have already self-agreed to, or change it before the transfer, or all agree that we're going to do something different here. So be very careful with that one if you're pre-planning. That maybe you want to give some flexibility to yourself. If maybe first you do like a book value, but then that if the parties disagree, here's your formal valuation method, and then who pays for that. You also are going to need to decide if you're selling rather than just closing out, whether you're going to do what's called a stock sale or an asset sale. Stock sale means you are selling all of your interest in the company, but the company survives. Okay, that means Polaris Law LLC, if I am selling all of my stock in that company, nothing's happening to the company. If all of the 3 members are selling our interest in the company to somebody else, the company still survives. The LLC lives. It's a separate entity from us. We are just selling our interest in it. All the bank accounts stay the same. The EIN stays the same. The contracts stay the same. Nothing changes with your clients, but all of the liability with the company also passes by default. Now you can change that with contract, but that's what happens with a stock sale. Versus an asset sale, you kind of pick and choose. Think about it like if you're going in and going to like an estate sale, you're not buying the house, you're buying the various furniture, the equipment, the silverware, the paintings. Maybe one person buys all those assets. Great, they still didn't buy the house. Okay, so a stock sale, you're buying the whole house and everything that comes in it, except maybe 1 or 2 things that the owner is choosing to keep. Asset sale, you're going through like an estate sale and buying the furniture and the silverware and things like that individually or as a lump. Okay, so that's very common if either the person does not want the liabilities that come with the company, or maybe you're not selling all the assets to one person. So for example, we do a lot of the general counsel things, but my partner Catherine also does family law stuff. So maybe we would want to sell assets and we would sell all of the general counsel contracts and clients and work over to one law firm. And then we sell all the family law contracts and clients over to another law firm. So that would be a common reason to use an asset sale. Another reason to use an asset sale is if you're selling to an established company, a lot of times they don't want your LLC. So if I am selling to that friend that's the trust and estates attorney, she doesn't want my company. She has her own company. She just wants everything that comes with my company. So, but it can be more work because then you need to go through each individual contract. You need to get completely new bank accounts if they don't have the bank accounts. So it's more individual work, but less risk for the buyer. So you need to decide at the beginning whether you want to do a stock versus an asset sale and if that's negotiable. If you're like, I affirmatively want to keep my company after this so I can continue doing consulting work, not negotiable, has to be an asset sale, right? If you're saying no, I affirmatively want to keep this, not negotiable, has to be an asset sale. Otherwise, decide which one you like best. And then also, are you flexible with that? Around the 2 years in advance, that's when you start doing the real house cleaning. And again, this is ideal. This is your attorney's best day. Obviously, if there's an emergency, this doesn't happen. If you've been doing the day by day, you could probably skip a lot of these things. But you get that corporate book in order. Make sure your operating agreement's up to date. Do you have those annual meetings in the same places? Get your past 3 to 5 years of finances together. Why do you need to do those things? Because if you're selling, even to somebody internally, you have to do what's called a due diligence period. They're going to ask for a lot of information about your company to see whether this is actually worth the price that you're asking for it. And you have to give it to them. Okay, if you don't give it to them, you could be misrepresenting what the state of your company is, or just they could decide not to. I'll tell you, I would tell my client not to purchase a company if somebody is refusing due diligence requests that are reasonable. Now, there's reasonable and unreasonable. This is where you get your team in to say, is this reasonable? Is this not reasonable? Can negotiate some of those things. For example, you don't have to give a prospective competitor a list of all of your clients. That would not be a good protection for you. However, you may need to give them a list of like a coded list of your clients that have the contracts and how often they come in, but with the information that they would be able to use to compete with you removed. So this is where having that team is important, but you need to get these cleaned up and ready. Get that long-term team filled out for anyone you haven't talked to. If you've been waiting to talk to that trust and estates attorney because it's really not that important, now's the time you got to do that. Meet with the financial planner, make sure that you're on the same page with that. Then also review those internal systems. Make sure that everything is in place where you could hand this over to someone and they would know what to do. Because otherwise, most of the value of the business is in you and your head and not in the business. Any of knowledge unique to you, start spreading to your team or plan how you're going to spread it to the new owner. And then this is where you quote unquote finalize your transitional plan. So that plan we've been kind of working on and playing with over years. Now we actually get those final details in order. Think about what you want to keep. Maybe it's a program that you wrote. Maybe it's the ability to consult. Maybe you just want to keep these 5 clients so you can have these kind of outstanding work that's going on. Release any liens or securities. A lot of times if you have a loan, if you have a mortgage, if you took out an SBA loan, you need their permission in order to do a sale. And you probably have to pay that one off. Either you have to agree to pay it off with the proceeds of the sale, or you have to agree to let them get it back. So go through all of those things now, because if you like get into the sale, you're excited, and then you find this thing and it's going to take you 6 months to have it released, like that's going to be a problem for you. If you're doing an internal transfer, start making sure you're talking to that group to see what they want and need, and get a non-disclosure agreement together. So that to the extent you are potentially giving a competitor your finances, your client list, things like that, they're agreeing to protect it. You have a contractual protection that if you change your mind, if they change their mind, they can't compete with you. They didn't just get this all for free. Okay, so that's kind of that first one. Then 12 to 18 months in advance, we're now at like the year coming in. If you're doing that internal one, the family one, talk to people, make sure they want it, see if they can. If you're saying, I have $1 million business and I want my employee to buy it, you can't give them a 6 weeks notice to see if they're going to need to take out a loan. This is when you're good to have that early conversation with them of like, I would like to do this. I want you to see if you can do this. If you can't do this, I then need to shift strategies. So I want to give you like 3 months to talk to your wife, talk to your financial planners, tell me if you're interested. And then if not, I need to change directions. Okay. Don't spring it on them. That's not fair. And it's not going to work. If you're doing employee ownership, create that employee ownership plan. How do you start transitioning those in? If you are going to do an arm's length sale, start talking to a broker. Oftentimes, if you're doing a smaller sale, broker's not worth it. They take that percentage. If you're doing a larger sale, they'll handle a lot of these things for you. Totally worth it. They'll handle due diligence. They'll handle the negotiations. They'll tell you in real talk what your business is worth, how you need to fix these things. And then start sharing those management responsibilities. Again, start taking the things off of you. 9 to 12 months in advance, then start getting that valuation going. Start putting together your due diligence packets. We started making sure we had them all at that 18 to 24 months, making sure they were all in place. Now we're going to start putting them all in one place. Put them all into a folder. You're going to need to show your assets, your liabilities, your contracts, your corporate documents, your finances. Now, if you're just doing an asset sale, you may have fewer of these that you need to share with somebody. But if you're doing a stock sale, you need to do all of these. And at this point, you should affirmatively determine whether you're doing that stock or that asset sale. 6 to 9 months. All right, now we're really into it. Okay. This is when you start getting a letter of intent. Letter of intent's not binding, except for confidentiality provisions. It just says, now I am exclusively going to deal with you for this duration of time. If we don't have this done in this duration of time, we're going to move on. Usually it will also have an initial price on there. You have agreed to buy all of this for this price pending due diligence. Due diligence can change some things. If they're like, given what I've seen, it's not worth what we said, you kind of reopen negotiations, but you're at your starting point. It's like, from what I already know, I do think this is worth $100,000. I do think this is worth $500,000. And usually you're not varying so much then once with due diligence. There's a reasonable term. Then you start due diligence. That letter of intent says, all right, we're taking this seriously. Now I can give you some of these documents. Definitely don't give anybody due diligence documents without an NDA. Preferably have a letter of intent to show they're serious. And determine the financing. Seller financed means that you, as the seller, are agreeing to not get all of your money at once. You're letting them pay you with a promissory note for some of it. Buyer financed means that they're fully getting what they need to do to pay you all of that money in one go. Usually it means that they're going to need a loan if it's for a bigger one. And so they need the time to start this process. That's why I say 6 to 9 months for this one, because banks can take a while. The SBA can take a while. The SBA works on their timeline, not yours. You can choose an attorney that you can say, I need this done by the end of the month, and they'll either tell you yes or no. If you tell the SBA I need something done by the end of their month, they're going to say, no, it takes 90 days. So get this started early. 3 to 6 months, that's really when your accountants and your attorneys get going on this one. Start drafting the legal documents, start releasing those liens, talk to your landlord about transferring any leases that are in there. Legal documents are going to be the purchase agreements, but then also any assignments and transfers of intellectual property rights and contracts. 3 months to close. You're now in those last 90 days. Last 90 days are busy. And that's when it's really like for real. You have that final price. You've got the contracts that are going in there. This is when you start talking to your clients, your employees who have not been part of the deal, your vendors. You start doing press releases if you're big enough, appropriate enough. Finish transferring responsibilities. You start getting in that health insurance, personal equipment, the website, the emails, get all of those things in. It's a lot of doing in those last 3 months. And for a lot of businesses, it really does take that 3 months. Now, some businesses will do this in the 3 months after close under a transitional agreement. That's okay too. Honestly, it's usually a little bit of both. In my perfect world, they probably straddle. You start them in that 3 months to close, but you'll have some that don't happen until it's formal and official. So then in an emergency transfer, you obviously don't have all of that lead up. So you just are going to be doing whether it's a close or a transfer over. So close for these purposes means that it's done. It's like closing a sale of a house. It's done. This is now transferred over on that date. New owner owns it. If the thing you need to know with an emergency transfer is in the event of unexpected death of you, is it going to shut down the business, close in the normal sense, or is it going to transfer? If it's going to shut down automatically, that needs to be in your organizational documents. That's not the default. The default is the business survives, your interests transfer according to your will. If you have no will, it will transfer spouse first, then your kids. If you have no kids or spouse, then your parents. If your parents are not still alive, then your siblings. If you don't like any of that, you need to get a will, or you need to have the LLC automatically shut down if something were to happen to you. But if you have done all of those other processes earlier, that emergency closure transfer is going to be way easier on everybody involved. So I see that we're just up at time. The key takeaways, if you take away nothing else from this, is that you have multiple realistic ways to leave your business. And that you can make more of them work. The more you have planned in advance, the easier time you'll have with the choice that you want. Communicate, communicate, communicate. That key team is really important. The people who you're working with are really important. And then have that flexibility built in. You're planning, but you're planning a bunch of different things that you can do. If you take away only those things from here, that is what I want you to take away. I will stick around for a couple minutes for any questions, but I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I also want to reiterate and emphasize, as always, that if you're an SBDC member, you're entitled to SBDC consults, both with legal teams as well as the financial teams. Do take advantage of that one to talk to folks about this if you're in those initial planning phases and want to kind of talk a little more detailed about what to do. General question. Sam. General question. How do you find someone to do consulting with you about your business? That's a great question, Megan. You know, first and foremost, definitely use your SBDC resources. I think you said you were down in Castle Rock. So sign up for SBDC consulting on that front. If you're looking for a more regular or personalized business consultant, talk to that SBDC consultants about referrals. Your SBDC consultants will give you at least 3 referrals that will fit kind of who is good for you and your business and your industry based on kind of what your specific questions are. Raul, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, so I'm going to be sending out a link for consulting in a follow-up email. Click the link, get set up with them, and from there, we'll connect you with whoever you need to be connected with, whether that's a different center or a specific type of part of the industry, your industry or segment of your business, marketing, etc. So definitely reach back out if you have any confusion with that or any questions with that. And yes, if you need some legal consulting, you see Samantha's information here. I'm also going to be sending her PowerPoint slides in that email, so please
And
follow
a
up
fun
with her.
bonus handout.
Yes,
Which I haven't sent to you yet,
and
but I will send you right after this.
and I must say that was amazing. I was blown away. That was so very clear and succinct, and because I know you can go down a lot of rabbit holes.
A lot of rabbit holes.
And that's why it's such a long process, right? So there's so many components to it that you really should start thinking about it now and get, like you said, Megan, that's great. You're just starting. Get in front of a consultant now and say, hey, I want to start my exit planning process. And so you can get the pieces that are important for you now and then have the other little milestones set up as Samantha's laid out here. Is there any other questions for Samantha at the moment?
No other questions, but thank you guys so much.
Great. Yeah, so if there's no other questions, then we'll say again, thank you, Samantha, and we will see you soon. Y'all take care.
Sounds good. You guys have a good afternoon.